All right. We'd like to welcome everyone here today to this webinar. We have joining us Jim Riherd, right? Did I say that
Yes.
right? Oh,
yes,
man,
you did. Thank you.
Been practicing for hours. No, from Measure Square, he's going to be joining us here today to hopefully enlighten us on all of the questions that we might have surrounding estimation. It's been gracious to give his time to us, and we're really looking forward to this today. So first of all, Jim, why don't you just introduce yourself, give us kind of a background of who you are, where you come from, your dog's name. I don't care. You know, anything that you think that would be helpful to help us get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll start. Obviously, thanks for having me here. It's really a great opportunity to speak to you, Chad, and hopefully convey some helpful information, to the audience here. Again, my name is Jim Riherd. I'm the VP of Operations at Measure Square. I handle all the day-to-day things in the office, with internally and externally. Work a lot with the product team. Like a lot of us here, wear many hats. I'm sure Chad does as well. I've been with the company about 6 years now. I have a background in a kind of various different fields. I started out in retail when I was younger. If anyone remembers it, I used to work at Blockbuster back in the day. So I came from that retail environment in a corporate setting. I studied civil engineering, construction engineering, computer science a bit at Cal Poly Pomona. I'm born and raised out in Pasadena, California. It's a little suburb outside of LA. If you ever watch Parks and Rec or any certain TVs, you'll see our city hall and a lot of openings. They do a lot of filming out here because we're pretty close to Hollywood. I think one of the things I really enjoy about working here and working with Chad is the collaboration efforts. So it's another reason I'm really happy to be part of this webinar, is to be able to convey as much as we can. Hopefully some people learn some new things and gain some insight out of this. So again, thanks for joining me, and I think we can get on going here.
So Pasadena, that's where Measure Square's at, right? The corporate
yeah. So yeah, exactly. So we're based in Pasadena, but we do, like a lot of the world now, we have some people working remote, working a little bit farther out. So we've embraced that kind of hybrid approach. We're founded by Stephen Wang. He's our CEO as well. We've been around since about 2001, so a little over 20 years now. He has a PhD in computer science from USC out here. And his wife actually came from flooring and still works at the same flooring company she did at the time. And essentially the way the company got started was that she needed, I think, an algorithm or some software way to figure out theming for floor plans. It was kind of a tedious and hard job to do by hand all the time. So I think that was probably how he wrote the first kind of computer code for it. And then he just started to grow the software from there. Eventually realized he can't do it all on his own. Started to build up a software team in his hometown, and just the company kind of grew from there. I know Chad's known him for a long time, so they've probably been growing and shaping the market together for some time now.
That first version of the estimation that he created, we actually integrated it into QFloors, and that it has been kind of our go-to estimator for the last 20 plus years. And I remember the first one was called Q Estimator. Mm-hmm. And so there was actually a name for it, Q Estimator. I think we kind of sold it apart from you guys, but it was kind of our own branded thing. That was the very first version.
Yeah,
I stood there for about 10 years, and then things have evolved, and then you got into commercial and laser measuring. We'll talk about all that, but yeah, it's been a long time history and relationship, and it's been great to see you guys grow into what I would say the preferred estimation platform in the flooring industry. So can you take just a second, Jim, and maybe just explain briefly so that people know when we say estimation software, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, I think in a simple way, estimation software is a tool you use to capture areas, rooms, floors, walls, and so on to, quantify those areas and then create an estimate based off of those for a project. And that can range from, a house, an apartment, all the way up to a hospital or airport. So it really probably translates into two main categories, as you were mentioning, where it's, retail / multifamily for the smaller scale, with on-site measuring, which it's evolved into now to get away from paper and pen or a measuring tape. And then the other side of the equation with commercial or new build would be, on-screen takeoff, where you have a set of plans from the architects. You're essentially tracing to capture and digitize those areas, and then use the specific estimation tools built for our industry to capture the correct quantities, and then obviously generate a quote or a bid in the end to win the job.
So just real quick, if I'm a retailer, a dealer, how would I actually use this? What would it look like for me? What would that look like in my company?
Great question. So for our retailers, as you mentioned, we've gone through many iterations of the software, and one of the nice things that Apple did was create a really nice, pretty cheap tablet that works pretty well with a touchscreen. It's a lot easier than lugging a laptop out in the field if you don't need to. But essentially, our iPad app is or iPhone or Android tablet. We don't mind which one. You can take that app, take a Bluetooth laser like a Disto or Bosch that has Bluetooth, connect it to our app, and then you can essentially go outside, go to the unit or house, and just start measuring the rooms. It's kind of the same concept that you would do with the measuring tape, but you're going to just take your laser, point it, shoot the measurement, it translates that into a wall on the software, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat, create those shapes that represent the rooms. And then once you're done with that, you can add in your product. So it could be, carpet, vinyl, engineered flooring, it could be tile along the walls if you're doing like a backsplash. And then the software will start just automatically calculating that for you. So it takes it a step beyond just taking an area and giving you square footage, because obviously, it comes to a roll good that the quantities are very dependent on seam placement. It's much more complicated than just taking the square footage of a room, especially when it comes to the installation side of the equation. And then once you have all that done, you have your installation package essentially already done. If you have your catalog, with QFloors, you got your pricing, and then you can just create that quote, give it to the customer to hopefully close out on the spot.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more at the end about the integration. So anybody that's wanting to understand how these things integrate together, we'll address that here towards the end of our presentation. For a commercial dealer, what does that look like for them? So that was a great description for retail. Let's talk about commercial.
Yeah, the commercial, there's a lot of similarities, but commercial to us is where our Windows platform comes into play. So you will be on like a Windows laptop or Windows desktop, a larger monitor probably if you're sitting at your desk all day, and you're usually going to be getting a set of blueprints. It might be hundreds of pages. It's not a simple house that's 120 or 1,200 square feet. It might be hundreds of square feet, and you need to take those blueprints, scale them, and then do a similar process. You need to create the rooms digitally. So in this case, you're going to be tracing them based off what you see on the floor plan versus measuring on site. And then once you have those layouts in place, then you can start, you generate your finished schedule that based on what the architect has or the GC has sent over. Start building that project item list, adding the products and materials into the correct rooms on the walls, ceilings possibly, and then just going through those the same motions of estimating, getting the layout correctly, getting the possibly advanced and detailed tile patterns in place, so you can estimate and order the correct quantities, and then make sure those get installed correctly as well. So the same things matter as it does in retail. The seam placement, the amount of waste you have, the amount of items you're going to order. But then with the commercial side, there may be more complications or details. You may need to estimate this by phase. You might need to estimate it by floor. So your quantities and wastes aren't shared across everything if you're trying to make sure like the ordering is done correctly. So it will be a much larger job. And one of the other big differences obviously would be the time span, for the job itself. Retail might be a little bit quicker, short term, get paid out quicker, but commercial jobs will run a bit longer. So the Windows version will be able to do a much heavier lifting to handle those more complex jobs.
So one of them's a little bit, the retail's more mobile on an iPad.
Exactly.
And the other one's more of a desktop, sit down, big computer, big screen.
Exactly.
That type. Do retailers also use the commercial version, or do they cross, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's where, people always hear about these days, like what is the cloud? What is it for? Do I care about the cloud? And the answer is yes, the cloud is great. We have our applications that run locally on the machine, which is great for out in the field. Not a lot of people can have great internet when you're out and about sometimes. But in order to like collaborate and transfer files, the cloud is a great middle ground to get that to each other. So we have plenty of folks that are on the retail side who do use our Windows version. They may not use the full-blown commercial version. They might have the retail office version, which is essentially just you don't have to worry about paying for all the features you don't need that a commercial version might have, like phasing. And you could take anything you've measured out on site, sync it to our cloud, and then sync it down to the Windows version. So if someone in the office needs to create a revision, maybe the customer said, hey, I wanted carpet everywhere, but now they want like more of a split in an area and they need to divide it up, but the person measured it's already on to the next place. The person in the office can open that up, do everything, maybe a bit more that the on-site person did, make those changes, send the customer a quote. So it's a really good collaboration tool. Some people will bundle them together, and a lot of the office folks will handle that side too.
So between the versions, they communicate, it sounds like.
Yeah, like, if you're looking at the two, they may have their UI visual differences, but it's the same file type, which is great. So it's not like a conversion takes place necessarily like that. Same way, if you have a Word doc, you can open it on a Mac or Windows or your phone. Same concept with us too. Okay, good.
Here's a question I get all the time. All right, so I'm putting the question. All right, put your hat on here. Here we go.
Okay.
So this is what I'll get these questions here and there. So I'll throw a few of them out that I get. Question about, all right, the person, the dealer, been doing this for 50 years in their head, right? Like they just walk out, they look at the thing, they don't even have to lay a tape down hardly, they just, whatever it is, and then they're out of there in 10 minutes, right?
Right.
And how does this benefit somebody like that who feels like they can do it a lot faster, and because they've just been doing it for 50 years in their head instead of just using your tool?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We get it all the time too. I like to think that if I go out to a house and I'm racing someone with a measuring tape, I could beat them, but I might not. I think it's not necessarily the initial step that's the most important. But capturing the digital floor plan, it's more about what comes after that. If you could, if it's a house, a lot like my apartment is a bunch of squares and maybe an L shaped, not hard to measure by any means. But it's usually, the material that starts to make it a little bit more complicated. So if maybe we measure at the same time, maybe by manual approach, it could be quicker. But then once you actually start to doing the seam layouts, how do you create a seam layout for an installer that they would actually understand what about the seams are wrong, and you just have to erase them and start all over. You have to use a calculator. The big part is the human error part starts to come into place after you get the measurement done. If that person's sick that day and they have that measurement in their notebook, how are you going to access that? So once you get a digital floor plan, it really allows the much more to take place. If you need to make a change, maybe the person didn't take into account the true size of the room, and they measured based on like cut margins and things like that. but then now they need to add in laminate instead, and it throws off the quantities and makes it too over or something like that. So once you get into that digital world, is much more flexible. I know churn could be a big problem in certain industries, including our own. And if someone has a bunch of papers or loose papers with all these measurements, those can disappear really easily. Versus if you've done it through an application, it's synced or backed up to the cloud, anyone has access to it, and it's very easy to recover those files and use them in the future. Especially if you need to reprint something or make quick changes or have someone else handle it. So a big part is not just the measurement. It's probably a smaller part in a way. It's kind of everything that comes after it, especially when it comes to estimating and really fine tuning the measurements. I mean, I don't trust my math, so I definitely want a computer to do what it does best and think a little bit faster than I can.
Perfect. Yeah, and it can connect to QFloors, so we'll talk about that
Exactly.
a little bit, like I said. But all right, so here's another question for you. I think I'm getting the good ones here. Let's talk about accuracy for a second. You kind of mentioned that just a second ago. How accurate? I've had some people complain that I can calculate it better, more accurate. These tools are over calculating. They give too much material or whatever. Can you just talk about the accuracy, and is the accuracy similar between the retail version and the commercial version? Is there any differences there?
Yeah, really good question. I would say, when it comes to on-site measuring, if you look at the Bluetooth lasers, the laser are, I think, accurate to like 1/64th of an inch. And if you have a 40-foot wall with furniture in front of it and a bunch of kids' toys everywhere, it's pretty hard to get that measuring tape to go the full distance that you need. Versus if I just stand in a corner, shoot a laser, turn 90 degrees, shoot that way. I've shot 2 dimensions, and now that perfect square of a room is as accurate as it could possibly be. And then, so that's like the first part, and then that goes the same with.
Hold on, you could use that with just writing it down on paper too, though, right? So
Yeah,
it goes beyond that. So the next part would be the actual calculation. I think that's what I'm wondering about.
Yeah, and so it's the same with the commercial version. Tracing or shooting the measurement, you get that same digital square or an area, and then it's once you start adding in the products to do the calculations. If you have a square room, length times width, we could all probably figure that out pretty easily. But actually, once you put the seam layouts in there and you start to try to calculate the cuts yourself, or you're adding 3 different tiles onto a wall and you need to add the waist percentages on there, that's where like the fine tuning is really helpful in the software. The software is never trying to tell you, hey, this is how much you should do. It's more like giving you the tools to estimate it based on your industry knowledge already. So the carpet layouts or roll good layouts are results based on where seams are. Obviously when you throw material in there, you'll see where seams start. But the software is not saying this seam is perfectly where it should be. We know the person estimating knows where a seam should be. It might go, obviously not through a door. Things like that. It will rely on the user to do that, but then it will do those complicated layouts based on what you told it to do. So you don't have to try to think how those cuts should fit together. It's much easier to manipulate it on your own. Same when it comes like the tile and laminate is, if you don't want 20% waste, it's very easy to change that. If the tile's bigger or smaller and a bigger tile might be able to be cut an extra time to be reused somewhere else, you can just tell the system, hey, you can cut this once and it will automatically reuse it somewhere else for you. You don't have to do the guesstimation of, well, I think 5% might work, but I'm not sure I'll have enough tiles. The software could figure that out for you. Same with like hardwoods, you can just tell it how much over you need just based on your industry knowledge without trying to fine tune that. So it's kind of a collaboration in itself. We're not the software isn't like an all-knowing AI. It's going to utilize. It's a great tool, similar to like a hammer when you're framing a house. The hammer is not doing the work on its own. It's being utilized by someone's knowledge behind it. So I think it's more about like the measuring's probably the straightforward part. It's always the parts that come after it that it's the software is a great tool to rely on to reduce a human error. And one of the other ones like you've alluded to that I know we'll talk a little bit later on is like integrating with someone like QFloors, where you don't have to manually input all that data, which is another spot where errors can happen. It's very easy to mistype a number or something, and it can throw everything off. So when that's all digitally captured and can be pushed somewhere else, it can save time. And accuracy is obviously one of the biggest things that we want to pay attention to.
I think that's a misconception that maybe even I have or other people have, is that it really does help if you have industry knowledge to use the tool. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think with like what we see a lot is the I don't want to offend anyone, but the more senior or veterans of the world know flooring very well, but not maybe as familiar with software. And then on the opposite side, the next generation taking over, inheriting the business or buying the business, they may know technology very well, but there's not a lot of places to go learn about flooring from at a school or a college or a JC. We're starting to see programs pop up with construction technology where they have something about flooring, but those are still very early. And there's obviously other industry programs that are working towards that too. But a lot of the times, like, people are learning on the job. If you can eliminate one learning curve, it really helps on the other side. So someone who doesn't know anything about flooring, you can pick up our iPad app, they'll understand it. Then they just need to know how layouts work and how much waste should be on the job, and then they can help manipulate it. So I think that's a really helpful part of the software is eliminating those learning curves if you don't know one or the other. And then if you have that industry knowledge, change is hard, but we've trained so many people. It's one of the jobs I started at as Measures for, was a trainer and on support, and everyone can learn new tricks. I've definitely proven it. And I'm sure Chad has plenty of those experiences too, is that, it's always in our best interest to, be able to do our jobs better. And like using software is definitely one of those tools to help with those things.
So I was, just to kind of come back, the accuracy between the retail and the commercial version, are they similar? As the way it calculates the same, or is there differences in there, or?
Yeah, there's more function on the commercial side as far as what tools you can use, but when it comes to the basic math and the algorithms that calculate the carpet and the seam layouts and all those things, our development team is 30 plus people at this point, I believe. And I sit about 5 feet away from our head developer in the office, and it's his kind of like job to make sure everything works in sync. So the algorithms that he developed go across everything. So it's not going to be night and day if you're on the iPad versus commercial. It's the exact same powerful calculator in the background doing the work for everything.
There's a question that just popped up. I think we can handle this pretty quickly. Do you offer on-site training for Measure Square? I'm assuming that means somebody going out to their location and doing.
Good question. That was something we have done, and it kind of is on a case-by-case basis. Once COVID happened, obviously a lot of things shut down. So we do offer it if we have the resources to do so, and if it's if it's a large enough team. But we have a lot of training material online, and we do a lot of training sessions as we are right now. And one of the benefits of starting with the online training versus like on site is that we could record this, review it later on, and then even if new hires join, you have the training material going forward versus when you're out on site. A lot of great things get said over 8 hours, 16-hour period, but a lot of it can get lost as well, when it's just happening in person. So it is something we do offer if you are interested. Just, my email is jim@measuresquare.com. And I know obviously Chad and the QFloors team offer training as well, but if you guys are really interested in it, shoot me an email. We can discuss further. But we're a big fan of the online training. It's really scalable, and it's hard for me to portray how important having training material to be reviewed over and over again is so helpful.
Thank you. And depending on the kind of training that's required, if it's retail training, we can go on site and do it. It's usually, it doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
And that's what Jim's kind of referring to. Most people can do it without that, but if it's a more in-depth commercial training, we're going to leave that up to Measure Square to do. So
Yeah.
so that's kind of that. Well, let's see. So why would you so we have Measure Square. I know that in the construction industry, there are other types of estimation types of programs and stuff like that that aren't necessarily made for flooring, but I know people are using those for flooring in some ways. Why would, in your opinion, why would somebody consider going to a floor covering specific type software rather than just more of a generic estimation type software? What are they going to?
It's a great.
What are they going to get out of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a lot of measuring apps out there, on-screen takeoff platforms out there. That can range from, and I'm sure folks have used them, might still use them, or checked them out in the past. Like it can range from AutoCAD, which is obviously a very advanced platform that's could be pretty hard to use. It can range to Magic Plan, which is a popular iPad app, to Stack CT, Bluebeam, those sorts of platforms. But the biggest problems that we see, and this is feedback we get from our customers who have switched over or used in the past, is they're not. It boils down to they're not built for them. They lack the functionality that our industry needs. And it comes to things we've kind of mentioned before. Those platforms in general can't do seam layouts. They can do a fantastic job of getting you a square footage, which is one of the easier things to do possibly. But once you have to do a complex tile layout, backsplashes on the walls, those kind of things, it will fall short. One of the biggest things that we've are really happy about, especially if you even compare within our own industry with like someone like Calidus, is the full room concept. We don't live in a 2D world, and we've incorporated that into the software. Yes, you trace and see things in a 2D environment to start, but the minute you draw a room, it automatically has the walls built with it. So you don't need to go back and retrace all those walls. If it's on a retail level or commercial level, my apartment probably has like 40 walls technically, when you add them all up, possibly, or 20. If I have to throw paint or do something on those walls, I don't want to draw those out individually. And most of those other platforms will force you to do that. Now, if you take that to the commercial level, I don't even want to think about having to do that many walls, when a lot of commercial jobs will incorporate tile, vinyl tile, ceramics, a lot of bathrooms, depending what type of building it is. So that room concept, that's quite complicated. I have found out from talking to our developers that the complex polygons that we actually live in, with especially when it comes to curves and columns, are really important when it comes to the estimating side too. So like those exact tools to get those things done are much more developed in our software, because we're building with you guys in mind. We're not building it for ourselves, and we're building it from you. On the other side, it might be sometimes those can be too complicated. If it's something like AutoCAD, I've always joked we're like AutoCAD light and heavy on the light part, because you don't need to go to college to use it, hopefully. And sometimes those can be hard to manipulate to like twist them to what you need. And then there's like the lack of trade support. Their catalogs might be more simple. It might not have the integration capability with someone like QFloors. That data structure might not support how you need to break it down. Hey, I need a wall breakdown versus a area versus a room versus phase, those sort of things. So those might fall short as well. And they want to do a lot of things okay. We want to do very specific things very well. So we have you guys in mind when we're developing. So those are usually like from our perspective, and also the feedback we get from our customers on the benefits of those. I mean, I think we've had people blown away just for the fact that we have walls, if they're coming from like just a purely 2D environment, and then it's automatically generated a 3D view that they could show to their customers. Those are those wow factors that are kind of normal to us these days, but a lot of the generic solutions don't have that.
Okay. And just generically, can I throw something in here and then maybe have you comment on it and
Sure.
see, because this is something that I have seen personally from our customers. So I guess from my perspective, right? And then maybe if you could just comment on this. What I have seen is quite often our customers are thinking about estimation software with all the stuff that you just said, right? The accuracy, the, how much better this is going to be, and the digitizing and the, but I think one of the best arguments for estimation software, starting with the retail side, is that this is actually a marketing tool. And what I mean by that is if you go out and measure a house, a residential area or whatever, whoever the customer's sitting there watching you, and you throw down a tape and then start scratching stuff out on a piece of paper and pen, and then your competitor comes with their iPad and their disto and all this kind of stuff. This says professional versus amateur. So I would just say that I think in a lot of ways, estimation software can be a great marketing tool for your company. And what I've heard from my customers is that when they implemented this, their close rates immediately went up, right? From this, that they were closing more jobs just because of the perception they were giving people. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
No, that's a great point. I think when I started the company, we always would be like, it's a great estimation tool. But then we kind of realized, as if it was staring us, even though it was like staring us in our face all the time, it's a sales tool, really, especially on the retail side. Is the whole point of that is to generate a quote and get them to sign on the spot, give you a deposit, and close out. So, there is a big difference with a very organized PDF with a diagram, a 3D view, a very easy to follow quote, than a yellow piece of paper that I probably can't read, that not sure if that's a good price or not. And then they'll follow up with me in 2 days as they actually go back to the office and figure this out. We have a customer that we talked to a couple of years ago that they, they have their showroom and they go out and measure, and they'd come back, figure out the details, email the customer back. And probably the amount of times where it took maybe 2, 3, or 4 days to do that, that person shops around in that time because they're like, well, I'm not sure when they're going to get back to me. And once they started to use our iPad app out in the field and just even give them a quote on the spot, it's an estimation that may change once they actually do the real install. They saw their close rates go up about 20 to 25%. And it was just like a light shop at home model for them. And it did not take them much more time to do it out in the field. But they would be able to get that customer to commit much more than they did before, just based on, the actually is obviously one of them, but just something real in their hand that they can agree to on the spot.
Yeah, if you're not doing it, that your competitors are now. So don't leave that open. The second part of that question has to do with commercial. We have commercial customers that do not use estimation software, commercial dealers. And I'm going to just throw this out. This is my thing. I'm going to let you comment. We didn't rehearse this or anything.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, if you are doing commercial bid work, large jobs like that are going to last months and months and months, right?
Yeah.
Big jobs. That's what I'm not talking about. Main Street commercial where you're going down and doing a strip mall somewhere or something like that. Okay. I don't really think, I would not consider you a commercial dealer if you are not using isn't estimation software for commercial dealers a have to? That's the way I see it. How do you do it without it? I can't see it.
I agree. I've ran into people who, most of the time when we're talking to folks who are deploying Measure Square, they're usually coming from something else. But we do come across the ones that aren't coming from, they're coming from a drafting table and a lot of architectural scaling and rulers. And I can't believe that they're doing all this by hand. I'm always surprised when I come across that. Honestly, for anyone doing that, kudos. That's amazing that you can do it. But I think you can make your life much, much easier. I think that's like when we talk about accuracy, that's got to be one of the biggest ones is relying on the software to improve that side of it. You know, there's going to be errors as well, especially if it's revisions that come in, if there's change orders that come in before you even get out into the field to start installing. And just the speed alone, like, you know, everyone's going to say use our software, it makes your life better, and you know, you'll do things faster. But when it comes to takeoff and estimating at the commercial level, by hand will always probably be the slowest and most error prone way to go about it. And you know, there might be a learning curve. You know, it's hard to make time to maybe learn something new. Our CEO always says, you know, it's like you're going too fast or too busy to slow down for gas. Eventually, it's going to catch up to you. So I agree that if you're truly doing commercial work, it is a must-have. When I did some internships back in the day at a general contractor, a lot of people were just using Excel and doing things like that. I was probably one of the few people in the office saying, "Well, I'm going to use a digitizer that someone bought that no one's using." So takeoff software wasn't really there yet, but at least like the digitizer sped it up, and I was able to do some quick bids a lot faster than some of their veteran people, just because I could do it digitally and have the computer do some things faster for me to get that layout. So yeah, I'm impressed for the people who don't use it. Like, that's impressive, but I think you'll be happier if you switch over.
In that sometimes there are estimation services too. Some people might use those, right? And you recommend some, right? I think you have some that you recommend.
Yeah, we if on our partners page, we have a handful of folks that they just do estimating, and a lot of them are, you know, veterans in the industry. Honestly, it's most of them we know on a pretty personal level. They've been longtime Measure Square users. You know, we kind of have our vetting program in there where like we talk to customers who use them or mutual customers that use it, and you know, they may do estimating for a company all the time, or just do overflow work for them if they're getting, like, they're just trying to get more bids out. And one of the benefits of that is, like, if you're using Measure Square and they're using Measure Square, the file exchange is much easier than just getting like a flat PDF that you can't do anything with on your own. So if you are, you know, maybe you don't have time, you just want to test it out, the third party estimating companies are a great resource for that too. Some of our biggest clients utilize those services.
That's commercial, and that would be on your partners page, right? On your partners.
Correct.
There's some questions that we have here. I think this would be just a maybe a good time to pause and take some of these. You you mentioned disto, or no, you said trace the blueprint is what you said, and the person is asking, are you meaning trace it with a disto? What does that mean?
Sure. So if if you're measuring a house, you know, if you don't have a blueprint ready, you're likely going to be on site with a digital Bluetooth laser to replace your tape measure, and that will shoot the measurement into the app to draw out the floor plan for you, essentially. If I say trace, basically that means you have a blueprint up on the screen that's loaded in our software, and you're just basically pointing and clicking and going around the shapes of the rooms as you see them to digitize the floor plans into like the Measure Square room, essentially. And then I've usually this question pops up about like, why can't you have an AI trace the rooms for me so I don't have to do it if I have a big blueprint? We do have a beta AI in our commercial version where you can basically click and it'll scan the blueprint and try to draw the rooms for you. It's not 100% by any means, but sometimes it might be 50 or 80% accurate. It's kind of like just a fun side project we've been working on. And no, it's not ChatGPT. It's a little bit different than that. But it can speed up the process. So instead of you having to recreate all those rooms and countertops, things like that, it will try to do a little bit of the work for you.
Come on, ChatGPT, it's going to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, apparently.
There's some questions about interfaces. We'll talk about those in just a second. Another question here. Does this work with countertops?
Yeah, that's great. Our iPad Measure Square 8, there's a tool. It's kind of like a generic tool that people use for different things, but it's called Elevations. And that's a great way where you can create those islands and countertops. But We do have another tool that's kind of in beta we've been working on. It's called Measure Square Stone. And it's kind of like a very early version where it has to do, if you're doing like very complex slab layouts at a very large scale for like multifamily or commercial. And that basically, it's kind of takes like the concept of like a seam diagram for carpet, but you can utilize that for getting the cut pieces for a slab on the slab in the correct direction, so you know like how many slabs might need to be ordered like that. I do, it's kind of a new thing for us. We don't know like what the market is like, how much overlap there is with flooring at the moment. But most of the folks that do, we have a lot of folks that use Measure Square 8 for countertops. You can use our tiling function very well for it, where you can create the right slab or piece sizes, get them in the right direction, get the quantities for them. So the countertop along with the tile functions are a great way to do some countertop work, especially on small scales.
Okay. All right. So you have two options there, it sounds like. Do you guys support Android, or is it just an app iPad?
Yeah, we do have Android app as well. The UI is slightly different because of Android, but the app is pretty much the exact same as it is on the iPad. So you don't have to, we're not really picking sides when it comes to those two different devices.
Okay. So we are getting a lot of integration questions, so we will be getting to that next. We'll be coming up to that. But let's take care of a few of these other questions. With the last update, Measure Square no longer shows the pattern on our drawing. For example, a tile that is 6 inches by 36 inches. I used to show my customer the layout direction, and that was very useful. Is this something that I need to reapply in my settings, or is it no longer offered? Anyway.
Good question. If I don't answer this, if what I say doesn't work, email the support and we can get the right answer. But I believe that likely is a view option. So if you're on the iPad or desktop, it's probably towards the top right, and it's probably some sort of product grid would be off the top of my head. There's some, like, I know this didn't happen for everyone, but I think I've heard this before. Sometimes when an update gets pushed out, sometimes like the app has to get so reset, it might reset something you had on and then accidentally got turned off for whatever reason. So it's probably, it's very, very, very rare that we ever remove anything. So it might have just been moved or relabeled or just accidentally turned off. So if that happened, I do apologize. But it should just be a view setting from what it sounds like.
Let's see, I'm looking here. I get, we're going to talk about QFloors integrations. We're getting a lot of questions on that.
That's great.
We'll talk about all those, and then if you have additionals, we'll answer those in seconds. What about cabinets, closet systems? It says cabinets and closet systems.
Good question. If it comes to like, maybe if you're referring to like the assemblies of them, that's not something that we probably have many tools for. If it's just like the basic areas and, like an opening for a closet, things like that, that's kind of like probably the extent. But it probably just depends on like what you're trying to do. If it's like all the different pieces that go into like a window or a door or those kind of like installation assembly packages, we don't have like the details from manufacturer for all those. But if you're just trying to quantify certain things, we do have tools in there where our count items, where you can count things by each. So if you like create a database that might represent those things and drop them in, it might at least be able to give you like a count, the quantities of them. But obviously there's probably a lot more nuance to that question. So again, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to see if I can get you a better answer.
How does a blueprint come into Measure Square? How does that happen?
Sure. So essentially, if you're on the Windows version, and I think our iPad multifamily version has this option as well. So they're very similar, but if you're on the Windows version, there's an import button at the top left. You can import PNG image file, PDF, most common, or even CAD files. You just bring them in, select all the pages that you need if it is multiple pages. Make sure, always do this, set the scale for the drawings, double check the scale for the drawings, because you may get something from the architect that was not scaled correctly. So find a common point, find the dimension line, double check it. And then you just hit the import once they're scaled, and then it'll bring them into the takeoff screen. If you have multiple pages, you can put each page on its own tab, just like Excel has tabs. So to keep it more organized versus having like 20 pages on one flat screen.
So it's just kind of like an import feature, basically, is what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, very straightforward.
Can you estimate tile and shower? Estimate tile showers for showers, I'm guessing, including the materials and the labor.
Yeah, I haven't really shown anything, but Chad, if you don't mind, I can throw an example up.
Why don't you do that real quick?
Yeah, let me get the right slide here.
And I promise you that we're gonna get to the integration questions.
There we go.
Real quick. Maybe that's what everybody logged on for, is to talk about integration. So
all right, I'm gonna back up here. I think I got a nice photo of this guy.
So this, we're talking about showers.
Yeah. Where's my pretty photo that I wanted to show you guys? Here we go. And let's go to Winter. All right. And so can you see this okay, Chad?
Yep, we can see it. We're there.
Great. So this is the guy on the left here is a good example of, this is probably I think this is like a walk-in shower for like a gym probably. So it's like I think it might be connected to this large project over here. So this is a commercial size project. You can do the exact same thing on the iPad too, which is great. But you can see here that it's just a basic rectangle. You draw the floor, the walls are automatically built out. Drop in a door here, so the tile is not going to go through. The base isn't going to go through, and then you can attach all the different tile patterns on here. Obviously, this is pretty simple. But if it was like any of those kind of like weird fan tiles, those are in our library too, so you can apply. And then all these tiles in here are materials to us, and you can attach all the labor to them as well if you needed to. So if you want to do the adhesive, the grout, if there's any haul and remove, if it's like a tear out, the epoxy, all those kind of things, you can create those assemblies with our add-on functionality. So drag and drop the tile in or whatever it may be, and it can bring in like this 5 or 8, however many labor items you have to.
So the blue stripe is one tile, the orange is another one, the green's another one.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it might be like might have bullnose on the top, might be a more complex pattern. There's some pretty fun advanced features in here. Sometimes it's a tile design where you need to replace the individual tiles with different colored ones. You can go through in here like Microsoft Paint and click and replace these with individual tiles if you need to as well. If you have a photo of the actual tiles, that you might grab from Dell Tiles website, you can load that into the software, and those can show up on here versus just a generic color too.
Okay. If you're an installation company, how would this benefit us?
Great question. I mean, the output is always one of the most important things. For a sales rep, it's a quote. Usually for installers, it's the seam diagram, the installation schedule. So all these things that we generate in the software get converted to a PDF, and that could be the diagram. It could be the 3D view I just showed you. So we've heard countless times before they had something like this, if there's not just great communication with the installers and the sales team or estimator of the office, they might install the tile or start the pattern in the wrong place, put in the wrong direction. I mean, I watch a lot of HGTV and you see that stuff happen all the time. They install the wrong floor. There's a lot of things can go wrong, but when you have a very detailed seam diagram and supporting documents, it really can improve how things get installed, especially like direction and product placement. So it really reduces those install errors. So especially with the go ahead.
You see it being useful for installation companies then?
One of the biggest benefits, especially with the iPad app, super simple idea, is that all the rooms that you draw, you could snap photos out in the field and attach them to the diagram, and then when you print that out, all those photos come into play, will get printed out, and you can mark them up too with your finger, with like call things out, put text on them, and then that can just be given to the installer. And then you can even, the 3D model we create, you can send that link to an installer. They don't need the software, and they can open that on their phone and zoom in, see the tile, and see all that detail, when they're out in the field actually doing the work.
Why can't we use an iMac for the desktop version?
I am I am a Mac person. I'm sorry that we don't have our Measure Square 8 on a Mac. The sad truth is that most of the industry is still on Windows, and it would be a completely different app we would have to build. So unfortunately, we would lose a lot of money on it probably. But there is a solution. If you have a brand new M1 or M2 Mac, you can actually run our iPad app on there just without us ever doing anything. Apple's new chip system is the same as the iPhone and iPad, so any app on those opens on there. So you'd be surprised how many of the functions are overlapping between the two, especially if you have the multifamily iPad app. So you can import plans, you can hook up a mouse to it or the trackpad, and it works pretty well. If you are trying to do commercial work, we do have clients that will use Boot Camp or Parallels to install Windows on like a partition of the hard drive. And then since they have Windows running, they can install Measure Square 8 on that. So it's a bit of a workaround. I don't want to promise anything that's probably not happening. We'll likely have a cloud web version before that ever happens, and then it won't matter what device you're on.
I can answer it from a developer's perspective. The answer is $5 million. That's the answer. So that's another 30 developers and $5 million. So that's probably the bigger answer for that. So let's see. You have a detailed user guide, I guess, any help type things that are online, right? They're on your website.
We kind of strayed away actually from like a PDF user guide. They're honestly just really hard to maintain, and technical writing is super hard. So we switch our resources to a lot of video creation, which we find to be much easier and more helpful to our customers. So if you go on our YouTube channel, it's a great thing to subscribe to. When we push out updates and make changes, we'll usually do videos for a lot of the major stuff. So you can get notified when those get pushed out besides the release notes. So that's a great way to learn. We also have, if anyone's ever used Udemy, we have a bunch of like 3 or 4, I think, free courses on there. So that's a great way for new users to get started. Even if you just feel like you know a handful of things about everything, it's a very structured course versus a bunch of YouTube videos. But we have hundreds of hours of YouTube videos by far, and you'll probably get annoyed at my voice or my coworkers' voices as well with how many there are.
If you need there's some pretty detailed questions on here. If you need exact details on how to do a specific thing, I would encourage you to call one of our support departments, because we don't have the time to go over every detail, but that's where you can find some of the answers, or either of our support departments can help you with those. There was a question about Schluter. I would how can I add that? I would encourage you to call our support departments for that exact question. I can see the benefits for both mobile and in-office versions. So that'd be the iPad and the desktop. Can the mobile version be used in the office? Is there a bundle of mobile and office versions? I guess, is there a bundled price or a bundled package to have iPads and desktop or something like that?
Yeah, there is. You can use, some people do, if you have like a really large iPad, you can definitely use it in the office. It's just, most people in the office are on a desktop or a laptop even. But we have people who probably have the iPad in the office, but we do have a bundle. I believe for the commercial version and the iPad version, I believe it's $199. So I think he's probably saved like $30 when you bundle them together.
Okay. And the digital laser pointers, can you get them from anywhere, or they have to buy them through you, or what's the deal?
No, we actually don't sell them. We don't get a kickback or anything, so we don't really care which one you go with. But the most popular one, from my experience, is the Leica Disto D1. It's probably one of the first ones we did, but it's super simple. It's probably like $75 on Amazon, and it works really great. There's not a lot of buttons on there to like accidentally press and things like that. The D1, and then there's a little bit more expensive one, a D2 that shoots farther, which is pretty good as well. But we also integrate with Stanley Black & Decker lasers, Bosch. I might be forgetting a couple, but you can sometimes find Bosch and Stanley Black & Decker out in the stores, which can be helpful sometimes. We're just having to wait for it to come in the mail. But if you go to our mobile webpage for Measure Square Mobile, and just look at the iPad credentials, we'll list all the models on there. You can also email support to get them from us as well.
Perfect. So let's skip over to I'm going to leave the rest of these questions. Most of them have to do with integrations here. Let's skip over to integration topics for a second, since our companies, that's kind of one of the things. QFloors sells and supports Measure Square. Measure Square also sells Measure Square. We sell them for the exact same price. They're no difference in that. So it's more, we're giving you the preference and option to buy them and get your support from either company. What we mostly care about is that you get the product that you want, and whatever services that you want to buy, we're more than willing to provide those. So that has to do with this fact that we do have an integration, okay, that goes between us. Actually, there are several. So I'm going to talk first. I'm going to bring up my screen really quick so that we can kind of see what we're talking about. Let's see. So here is a version of Measure Square. We kind of already saw that a little bit. So kind of the idea is you're creating this in here, right? And then Jim, you can jump in here if I'm saying this wrong, or if you want to add to, okay? So with QFloors, we have actually 3 different integrations, and they're all used for 3 different purposes. The first one would be the iPad, more residential retail integration, right? So when you create your diagram and your stuff on the iPad with your laser measure and all that we already talked about, that project is saved, and then that project gets put into the cloud. Jim, they don't have to do anything special, right, to do that, right? Do they press sync with cloud or something like that?
Yeah, if you're on the iPad, you just hit the sync, it backs it up to the cloud, and then it's automatically available for QFloors to grab.
Okay, and so in QFloors, what you would do is come in and create a proposal, okay? We usually like to have at least the last name in here, and we have this estimator button right here.
Hey, Chad, can you share your screen?
Oh, am I not sharing it?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Good catch. Can you see it now?
Yep, you're good.
All right, thank you. I was going to go on for a long time there without showing it. So I was showing this Measure Square screen. Now I'm on QFloors, right? So you create this proposal, put a last name in, save it so that it has a number here. Then you can hit the estimator button right here. And if you leave this blank, the project name blank like this, it will go back and get the last 100 projects that you have saved on your iPads, okay? And so you can see that you'll scroll down and it goes to 100. It cuts off at 100, okay? And then you can select one of these, like I'm going to take this Green Street right here, select it, and then it's going to come and start to put all of the items into QFloors here. And you can see that it goes down and puts them in, okay? If you have a PDF also saved of your layout and everything, it will save that PDF into your docs area right here. I selected one that didn't have a PDF. Why did I do that? Anyway, I'm not sure which one does, but it will take it and it will put it into your docs section. Oh, I don't have it activated. That's why it didn't do it. And so, and then you can bring up the layout with the seam diagram and everything like that right in QFloors after you've connected it to here. Now, there's a couple of things that you should know about this integration. One is that on this integration here, the connection between style and color, it will only connect to Measure Square if you're using the same SKU number in Measure Square versus QFloors, right? You would have to manually add that SKU number into Measure Square, okay? And from QFloors. The labor types will also connect if you have the same name in QFloors as you have in Measure Square for the labor, it will also connect up the labor. But those are the 2 things that are specific in this integration. for this to happen. Again, this is all from the iPad basically and your retail connections. Okay, so that's the first type of connection that we have is for the retail iPad. The second and third one are mostly for commercial customers. You have the option up here in your setup for Measure Square. Instead of using the cloud interface, you can do a manual import. Okay, and what we found is for large commercial projects that have multiple floors and that are very large, the cloud interface does not work very well. So you would have to use a manual import interface. Okay, and in Measure Square, the way that you do that is that you come over to File, and then you go to Export, and then you go to FSDE File Export, save the file, and then you could come over to QFloors. And if I switch this to manual import like this, when you hit the estimator button, it no longer is looking at the cloud, but it's looking for files to import directly into QFloors. And the import process, the actual import process is the same. Matches on SKU numbers, matches on labor type names. Okay, so that's how that first commercial import works. The second one, which I think is even a better option right now that not a lot of people know about, is called the bid template import feature. So you'll notice over here that underneath the option to export, there's an export Measure Square report. This is what they use for their bid, what they call the bid template. And the idea is that we're going to export into Excel and then do all of our manipulations in Excel, and then bring that into QFloors after we've done the manipulation. So it's kind of a two-step, Measure Square to Excel to QFloors. Let me show you just really quick what that kind of looks like. Real quick, let's see, I've already got a few of these up here. Bid template. So here is what an Excel file, this is an Excel template. See if I can, this is what it would look like if it's empty, right? And so what we do is we say load the Measure Square file. So I grab this. This is the export that we created from Measure Square. I click on that and see how it fills everything in here. Okay, it's a much more detailed, and the good part about this is you can do a lot of manipulations in here that are more difficult in QFloors. Okay, you can move lines around. So if I don't like this line here, I can move it up to here, and I can play around with formulas as far as the costs and what the prices would be. So I did a little bit of that. In the interest of time, I'm just going to grab the one that I already kind of manipulated. So you can see that I filled in some more of the information here. I put some, quantities, some percentages in here to do my calculations. And then it comes up with retail prices and costs. And the other thing that's kind of flexible about this is you can put labor on the same line as the material, so that when it comes into QFloors, you can have material attached to the same. So there's more flexibility when it comes into QFloors about how it's going to look, more like what you're probably normally used to. So the reason that you would do this, okay, that you would use this import instead of the direct import for commercial customers is a couple of reasons. One, you can manipulate things here a lot easier, a lot quicker, and then you can get a bid out. If you look right here, they have all these different, all of these different options where you can actually send a bid out directly from the same Excel file right here. Oops. So you can see this, right? So you can get the quantities into Excel, get your bid, get it sent out, and then if it never gets accepted, you would never import it into QFloors. You would just do everything here until the bid gets accepted, right? Once it gets accepted, then you start in QFloors. So there's a couple of different options and a couple of different reasons why you would use this, okay? So those are the three types, one for retail, two for commercial. that you can use in the integrations. Jim, do you want to add anything to that? And then maybe we'll answer some of these questions about the imports.
No, I think you covered it really well. I would say like one of the most common questions for us is, the integration aspect. Once they're done estimating, they're like, well, now we got to move on to the bid or the quote, and double entry is always, the thing is like the bad word in the room. So, when there's multiple ways to export the data, get it into QFloors without having to do any type of manual or double entry, it's kind of like the obvious benefits of it. Speeds up the process, and most importantly, reduces the errors. So I think it's beneficial to the customer, that when we have multiple different ways, depending on the use case.
I will say that with the, maybe come back and just add, with the retail import, most frequently, the way that it's used is people use generic names so they don't have to put the SKU numbers in. They'll just say like carpet 1, carpet 2, carpet 3, vinyl 1, tile 2. And then when it imports into QFloors, it's got a generic name in here. And once you get it into QFloors, this is where you would start adding the names in, is here, right? So like this, I would just come back. Once I have the quantity, I would just add the names from the catalog in there, okay? I guess the other question would be, how do I get my catalog into Measure Square? It's probably not in the roadmap for either of us to do that. I'm not sure. In QPro, our new QPro product, Measure Square is reading directly our QPro catalogs. So they're not even having to save it in Measure Square until the customer picks it. So I think that that's more the future of what we're probably looking at doing. Wouldn't you say, Jim? I don't know. Expand.
Yeah, no, I agree. As like I kind of mentioned about like, the cloud being like a really good thing. Like our software is, runs more or less on premise, it's on your device locally. But then we have the strong cloud component behind it. One of the just kind of how the world works with on-premise software, integration is hard to do. Both sides have put a lot of effort into it, and sometimes it's hard to connect systems, that mesh really well. But the cloud or a web environment is, it's a more advanced technology, more flexible in certain ways. So QFloors has done a great job with QPro as they moved it onto a true cloud environment. That allowed their catalog to connect to ours. Surprisingly, pretty straightforward, which is great. On our side, that's something we're really investing in. Starting in the second half of the year and going on, is updating our system and our catalog to be able to support a tighter integration. I like realistic expectations. It's not an overnight thing, but it's definitely something that is a priority for us to make those integrations, more just better and tighter together. It's not missed on us when, like, if we're trying to generate quote or a bid, having the pricing and the catalog and all the information easily available is very important, because then if it's not, double entry takes place, errors may take place as well. So, it's definitely something that we are invested into improving, and we'll hopefully be able to, make people's lives even more easier, as we improve those integrations and keep advancing them. I don't think either side is sitting on what we've done and be like, okay, we're done. We're always looking to make it better.
We're also starting to explore. I think most of our QFloors customers know that within the last month, we just released a new QConnect feature with product catalogs. And so we're starting to explore maybe the possibility of Measure Square looking at those online catalogs through QConnect and seeing if there's a possibility of bringing those catalogs in from QFloors. So it's not for sure yet, but we are exploring that. It's so new to QFloors also, that QConnect catalog that we've put out there, but this would be probably a good situation where we could use that feature. Let me see here. We've got a few questions. Is that Excel file available for download? Do you have it somewhere where they can download it, or should we put it on our site? I know it's kind of a new thing for us also, so.
Yeah, it's a good question. if you need it, you just reach out specifically to Measure Square support. It's something that's actually controlled by our cloud. So we just need to assign it to you. Essentially, if you have multiple users that need it, we can assign it to your cloud group. Either way, we just assign it to your profile. Once you sync your profile, it will show up as an option. But even if you get your support through QFloors normally, just feel free to just email us directly, because I think we have to do it on our end, and then you'll have it. And as Chad was mentioning, you can do a lot of manipulation with it as a local version. So if you want to like replace your logo in it, do those kind of things, you could keep a local version on your computer, and then you can just use that report Chad showed and just load in the estimation data from that file, so you don't need to generate that actual bid template every single time.
It's called bid template. That's the name of the Excel file.
If you email us, just ask like, hey, can we get access to the bid template? And then we should be able to get it there for you pretty quickly.
Okay, great. Let's see here. I think so. Let's see there. I'm just looking down our questions list. Why can't we have an update that puts the products from QFloors directly into Measure Square, so you don't have to put a new product in every time? I think we just answered that question, right? About the product catalog.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you say so? Okay.
Yeah.
I've been told by a QFloors user you cannot put in a project into the system for a bid unless you know the manufacturer and color. This appears to be a burden. I'm not really sure about that. Commercial work for 25 years. You can't not put a product in the system unless you know the manufacturing color. I think I'll probably need to talk through that. So I will reach out to this customer specifically for that question, because I'm not sure that I completely understand the context.
Got it.
And where he says he's been told by our support, maybe we told him wrong, right? I'm not sure. You mentioned that if Measure Square file has a PDF attachment, that as an estimator can import the PDF drawing. How does the Measure Square create a PDF file? So it would be the when you do the estimation, right? Jim, is there something special you have to do to create that PDF file that we download?
Well, if you need to create one locally, it's essentially the file print. I'm not sure how on your end, Chad, how it pulls it in, because I know there's an API that can generate the report as well.
We're just pulling the PDF that's in your API.
Yeah.
So that's the one that we're pulling. So how do they generate? Is it just automatically appear there?
Yeah, yeah. So like when you guys pull the API, it's always pulling from the estimation file in the cloud. So all that is just done by the cloud. The user doesn't need to do anything. The user wouldn't have to do anything.
Okay. I think the reason it didn't come up, I really apologize about my demo here. Looks like my docs button is not highlighted here. I can't click on it. And that's probably why it didn't ask me if I wanted to save the PDF or not. But in this whole process, we come up and say, do you want to save the PDF to the docs? And you have the opportunity to say yes or no. So apologize about the demo there. My fault. I should have tried it before. Let's see. Would you build your database in Measure Square to integrate to QFloors, or build QFloors to integrate to Measure Square? How do you integrate so that labor numbers and margins reflect accurately in both platforms? When we do the imports right now, we're using the Measure Square labor amount, the cost amounts for labor and materials, and for retail pricing. So if you have all of those numbers in Measure Square, they're going to come over through these imports, both the cost and the price that you're charging your customer. Now, the things that might change are like sales tax amounts, and we recalculate all those depending on what you have set up in QFloors, but the other numbers should be pretty much there.
Yeah, and then on our end, like like something like tax isn't connected to the product itself. It's kind of like in our worksheet module. So you wouldn't, like, if you create like a carpet, the carpet doesn't have a tax itself. It would be like kind of a separate part of our software. So I don't think you have to worry about like anything like that on that side of it.
But the numbers should be coming across from measure square to QFloors.
Yeah. Obviously, the quantity will come across. If you do have, if you don't have to put in pricing in the measure square. So if it's not in there, obviously the pricing in QFloors would work.
Will QFloors eventually integrate with measure square to where we can take the numbers from the blueprint estimation and have it immediately create a proposal within the products that you want, that you put into the blueprint? Where you can take the numbers from the blueprint estimation and have it immediately create a proposal. I don't know if that create a proposal is in QFloors or measure square with products that you put into the blueprint. I think he means proposal in QFloors and the products that you put into the blueprint. I think that's what we've been talking about with the product catalog, right? So
yeah, it sounds like it.
And so if you want to do it today, Gabe, this is for you. If you want to do it today, if you have the SKU number in measure square, the same one that's in QFloors, it will bring that product over automatically. If the labor types are the same names in measure square as in QFloors, it'll bring those over automatically too. So that's what you need to do to match as it stands today in QFloors. Okay. What are some of the most effective ways to utilize API? I think we've talked about that already. Do you export labor types and then import into measure square? No, we don't currently do that. Where you could import our labor types. So that's something that we haven't done yet. I think there's one last question here. There is a site checklist form that is available, I'm guessing in measure squared on the iPad, a site checklist. Do you know what that is, Jim?
Yeah, I think they're talking about the room. I might say it wrong. The room conditions form. It's like it's attached to each room. I think it just recently kind of went live, I believe.
In the future, will there be the ability to amend these fields and questions?
Great question. The minute we decided to make this public to everyone, we knew that would be a very quick question. It's possible. We don't know just yet. This is actually like a pretty old legacy form that we decided to turn on for everyone. It's kind of HTML based, so it's not easily editable in the current state. So our first step is releasing it to everyone, seeing how much traction it gets, how many people are going to use it. I believe in an update coming out in the next few weeks, you'll be able to print it when you go to file print. And then one of the next stages later on will be evaluating if there's a way we can open it up so you guys can edit it on your own. Not too sure yet if it's just capable from a technology standpoint with how it was built initially. But you know, if we can, we will. But if anytime if those things pop up, the more you tell us, the better. To be honest, just like anyone, everyone needs to prioritize what they're working on. So the more requests we get for something like that, the better we understand that's a really strong need for it. So hopefully we'll be able to get that done. Just not sure the timeline for it.
Jim, how do they send requests to you guys? How does that happen?
I would say the easiest, most of them will end up getting on my, going into my inbox at some point, but I'd say the easiest is through our support email. You can just add in feature request into the subject line and shoot it to our support, because then we could document it, see it's been requested. And anytime anyone sends those, the more detail, the better. Really helps us. If we don't understand it, it's hard for us to even really consider it. So the more detail, the more examples you can give us, the better. How often it comes up is important as well. If it's a very niche thing or something that you deal with on a daily basis, the more information we can get, the better we can evaluate it. So we do pretty much review everything that comes across our table. Obviously, we can't do everything that comes across, but there is a human eye that pretty much sees every request that comes in to see if we could how we might be able to implement it.
And I will say that right now for QFloors, I think you all know, email support@qprosoftware.com, put suggestion in the subject line. That's how we deal with it. You get a ticket assigned to that.
Yep.
As of right now, I am viewing and overviewing every suggestion that comes into QFloors. So that's one of my jobs. So I look at it, and sometimes I'll even call you back if we don't understand fully what's going on. So that's how you would get suggestions into both of our companies. Well, Jim, we've answered 28 questions.
That's great.
We've gone through a bunch of different things, probably at a pretty high level, the integrations. If people have more questions, they can call our support departments, but those are the things that are available between our two companies today. It's been a great relationship that we've had. Measure Square's done a great job for our customer base. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here today. Any last things that you'd like to do or say, or it's been an hour and a half. So, and we have 70 people that stuck with us through the whole thing, man.
That's great.
You must have been very, very compelling and very interesting for that to happen.
I hope so. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to present and talk with you. Really hoping some people got some good takeaways from it. And these conversations to me are never done. So like we're just talking about, if it's feature requests or anything like that, don't be a stranger. We're always trying to improve the software for you guys. We're not building it for ourselves. We're not using it on a daily basis like you guys are. So we're always trying to do everything we do with you guys in mind. So again, thank you. I really hope everyone enjoyed it. I know I did. Time went by really quickly on my end, at least. So really great talking to everyone. We're talking to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And I did hit the recording button, so we'll end us off, and we'll put this off online. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Great. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.